The morning sunlight in Sunnybrook spilled lazily across pastel clapboard houses, their porches dotted with rocking chairs and flower boxes bursting with petunias and daisies. The air was warm but fresh, carrying the faint scent of cut grass, brewing coffee, and just a hint of lilacs from the Jenkins yard. Birds chatted over the rhythmic hum of sprinklers, as if narrating the start of another peaceful Midwestern day. Inside the Miller household, Ethan Miller was already on his knees on the living room carpet, making a spectacle of himself in a bright striped sock on one foot, bare on the other, waving a rubber chicken in the air. "Who's ready for the funniest face in Sunnybrook?" he declared, voice cracking from overuse. Sophie, a 1-year-old with chubby cheeks and wide brown eyes, sat on a soft blanket, her tiny hands clapping in anticipation. Her squeals of delight had already become the alarm clock Ethan and Lily Miller, his patient wife, depended on, and the main source of neighborhood entertainment. "Ethan," Lily called from the kitchen, balancing a plate of toast and coffee, "she's already laughing. You're going to wear yourself out before 9. Ethan grinned. "Never too early for community service." Sophie let out a high-pitched giggle, rolling slightly on her back, and Ethan flopped onto the floor in exaggerated slow motion, sticking his tongue out and crossing his eyes. The baby's laughter erupted again, a sound so pure it could melt a snowbank. By mid-morning, the laughter had drawn the first of the neighborhood audience. Harold Jenkins, their retired neighbor, leaned over the low fence, squinting through his wire-rimmed glasses. "I don't know what you're doing over there, Ethan," he said, chuckling, "but the girl's got more joy in her laugh than half this town has in a year." "It's all in the silly faces, Harold," Ethan said, contorting his mouth into shapes that seemed impossible for a human face, one eyebrow higher than the other, his nose wrinkled like a crumpled paper bag. Sophie squealed, rolled onto her stomach, and started crawling toward him, an unstoppable tiny force of hilarity. Down the street, Jenny Lopez, a new mom, peeked out of her front door. Her coffee mug shook slightly in her hand as she laughed into it. "That man is dangerous, and yet, kind of brilliant." By noon, Ethan had elevated his comedy to slapstick artistry. He balanced precariously on a rolling office chair, waving a stuffed raccoon in each hand while Sophie's giggles echoed against the siding of their home. Lily shook her head, half amused, half worried. "You're going to topple over and make a hospital visit the highlight of Sunnybrook's weekly news," she said. As if on cue, the chair tipped slightly. Ethan flailed, arms windmilling, and landed with a soft thud into a pile of laundry that had escaped from the hamper earlier. Sophie erupted into uncontrollable laughter, rolling over and kicking tiny feet. Even Buddy, the family's golden retriever, barked joyfully, joining the chorus. Harold Jenkins leaned on the fence again. "See that?" he said. "Even the dog knows a good laugh when he hears one." The hilarity wasn't contained to the Miller's yard. Soon, neighbors had wandered over, drawn by the infectious joy. Mrs. Patterson from 2 doors down brought lemonade. Tim and Angie Myers set up chairs on their porch to watch. Children from the block gathered on bikes, their helmets slightly askew, laughing at Ethan's exaggerated antics. Even the local mail carrier, Rick Davis, paused mid-delivery to chuckle at a particularly ridiculous face Ethan made, one that involved crossed eyes, puffed cheeks, and a squeaky rubber chicken. It was a chain reaction. Laughter propagated like sunlight bouncing off glass, unstoppable, warm, and oddly therapeutic. Someone tripped over a garden hose, landing with a soft splash in a puddle, and everyone erupted again. It was chaos, but gentle chaos, small-town absurdity at its finest. By mid-afternoon, the Miller living room had become the stage for Operation Baby Giggle. Ethan had borrowed a handful of props from Lily's craft cabinet, feather boas, plastic sunglasses, a toy microphone, each producing its own hilarity. Sophie's face lit up with each new stunt, her joy contagious, her laughter a soundtrack of connection that seemed to pull even the busiest neighbor into the fold. Jenny Lopez, taking notes in the guise of new mom research, whispered to Harold, "I think he's discovered the secret to happiness." Harold shook his head slowly. "Kid's got the wrong profession. Should have been a professional morale officer." Even Lily, juggling a tray of snacks, couldn't resist the pull of Sophie's delight. She crouched down, made a few of her own exaggerated faces, and the baby's laughter doubled. "I swear," Lily said, wiping a tear from her eye, she could run the entire town with just a giggle. By early evening, Sunnybrook's front lawns were filled with neighbors who had drifted in, drawn by the sound of one small child's laughter and the ridiculous antics of a determined dad. Children attempted their own silly faces, pets added in barks and meows, and even the town's cats seemed to participate from the safety of fences. The miller's yard had become an arena of pure joy, a living, breathing comedy, a festival of human absurdity. Ethan paused for a breath, sprawled across the grass with Buddy snuggled beside him. He looked at Sophie, whose wide eyes sparkled with delight, and realized something he hadn't before. In that pure, unfiltered laughter, there was a lesson. A reminder that the simplest acts, the silliest faces, could create connections stronger than any plan, any calendar, any adult responsibility. As the sun dipped lower behind the trees, casting long, golden shadows across the lawns, Harold Jenkins leaned against the miller's fence. "You know," he said, "sometimes life throws you deadlines, bills, and errands. But a baby laughing at a silly face, that's proof the world isn't all serious." Ethan, still catching his breath, smiled. "Yeah, we're just stones in her river of joy. And apparently, the current's hilarious." The morning after the big laughter festival, Sunnybrook awoke to the gentle warmth of a late spring sun, soft clouds drifting lazily across the blue sky. Dew still clung to the grass like tiny glass beads, reflecting the soft light that warmed the pastel houses and the cheerful porches. The scent of fresh-cut grass mixed with the faint aroma of coffee from open kitchen windows. Birds sang in loose, unpredictable harmonies, and even the wind seemed to hum a playful tune. In the Miller household, Sophie sat in her high chair, bright bib secured, eyes sparkling with curiosity. Ethan leaned in close, face twisted into an absurd mask of crossed eyes, puffed cheeks, and a tongue sticking out so far it almost brushed Sophie's nose. Her laughter erupted instantly, a pure, musical sound that seemed to reverberate through the walls and spill into the neighborhood. Lily, perched nearby with a cup of steaming coffee, shook her head in disbelief. "You know, Ethan," she said, "you might just be the town's unofficial morale officer." He grinned. Official or not, someone's got to keep Sunnybrook smiling. By mid-morning, the sound of Sophie's laughter had already begun its magical work. Neighbors emerged onto lawns and porches, drawn like moths to a joyful flame. Jenny Lopez, coffee mug in hand, peered over her fence. "I swear," she muttered, "it's like a happiness contagion." Even Harold Jenkins, leaning on his cane in the front yard, chuckled. "Little kid," he said, nodding towards Sophie, "teaches more about life in one laugh than I learned in a lifetime of nagging deadlines." Ethan, now armed with a rainbow-colored scarf and a squeaky rubber duck, launched into his next set of antics. Sophie bounced in her high chair, slapping her tiny hands together, giggles bursting out with every exaggerated facial expression. Buddy, the golden retriever, pranced alongside, barking and trying to help by nudging toys toward Ethan. The street soon resembled a small festival. Kids on bikes wobbled by, parents gathered on porches, and even the postman, Rick Davis, paused mid-route to peek in and grin at Ethan's absurdity. Someone tossed a frisbee that narrowly missed Harold, eliciting squeals of laughter. It was chaos, yes, but the kind of chaos that bonded a community. By noon, Sophie's contagious laughter had become a neighborhood phenomenon. Ethan had enlisted Lily and Jenny in a series of silly face competitions, each parent contorting their features in increasingly ridiculous ways. Harold, seated on a lawn chair with lemonade, judged the contest with exaggerated seriousness. "I declare the baby the undisputed champion," he said, pointing at Sophie as she rolled on the blanket, gasping between giggles. Even minor mishaps, a toppled potted plant, Buddy slipping on the wet grass, became sources of shared amusement rather than frustration. Ethan flailed dramatically after Buddy, ending in a soft crash into the flowerbed, mud and petals everywhere, yet Sophie laughed louder than ever. The neighbors erupted alongside her, the entire street echoing with joy. It was as if the simple act of a baby laughing had created a ripple, smoothing tension, breaking routines, and reminding everyone what mattered most: connection, play, and the courage to be silly. By mid-afternoon, Ethan noticed something remarkable. People who had previously been busy or distant, neighbors lost in errands, teens glued to screens, adults buried in their chores, were now participating. A group of children tried to mimic Ethan's faces. Jenny helped Sophie clap along. Harold narrated the laughter like a one-man sports broadcast, adding dramatic commentary to the baby's giggles. Ethan paused, watching the community form an impromptu circle around Sophie. The literal laughter had become symbolic, a reminder that even small, fleeting moments could ripple outward, smoothing rough edges in unexpected ways. He felt a strange satisfaction, not from the success of his antics, but from witnessing a microcosm of humanity softened by joy. As evening approached, the sunlight softened, casting long amber shadows across the lawns. Parents carried babies from front yards, children lingered to chase each other in gentle games, and the scent of barbecues and baking bread drifted through the air. Ethan and Lily finally sat on their porch, Buddy curled at their feet, watching the gentle fading of day. Sophie, tired but radiant, nestled in Lily's arms, letting out occasional giggles when Ethan made even the slightest silly face. "You know," Lily said softly, "I think her laughter is bigger than all of us combined." Ethan chuckled. "Maybe that's the point. Some things are meant to be shared, not hoarded. Like joy." Harold Jenkins ambled by with his cane. "Remember this day," he said, eyes twinkling. "Some days, it's the smallest things. A silly face, a baby's laugh, that smooth out all the bumps life throws at you." The last rays of sun glinted off Sophie's hair, golden and soft, like a halo of pure happiness. Ethan leaned back, feeling lighter than he had in weeks. He knew the baby's laughter was more than entertainment, it was a lesson. Life would toss spills of coffee, muddy shoes, or dropped toys. Yet those little moments, pure, unfiltered laughter, could smooth the hardest edges, bringing warmth and unity to those around you. Sometimes the world asks us to be serious, to carry weight and play by the rules. And then, a baby laughs at a silly face, and the universe reminds you, joy is contagious, humor is healing, and small moments shape the soul. Life, like that laugh, is meant to be shared. Be playful, be present, and let laughter smooth the rough edges of your day. Because sometimes, the simplest things teach the biggest lessons.
Like and subscribe if you want to be happy and motivate.